Hey you, this is CovertGo2, and I set out to do a historic episode of the show because Arena Championship 2 happened this weekend. The coverage was on twitch.tv. I tuned in here and there. The first several rounds were draft, and then it switched to Historic Constructed, which is a format I don't feel like we've seen in a high competitive place for a little while. I haven't had a historic coverage in a minute, and that's interesting of its own because Historic has been on a rocky road from being one of the breakout formats during the pandemic to the controversy around Alchemy and rebalancing, and now being a format that I don't feel like I've seen played competitively in a pretty long time. But it was an interesting event. I had a good time tuning in, but then I went to the game store on Sunday. I watched a couple rounds up on the big screen TV, but I eventually had my back to it, so I missed how it ended. So I was like, you know what? I want to know who actually won. What deck prevailed? What player prevailed in the Arena Championship 2? And I couldn't find it. So this is Daily MTG, and here on the front page is the link to the announcement about the metagame breakdown, which is cool. We looked at, I think I looked at it on this show. Now it's hard to remember, but yeah, I mean, actually, I didn't talk about it on this show, so I'll do it really quickly. Jund midrange, 22.6%. Kethis combo, 16.1%. By the way, 31 player field. Supposed to be 32. Somebody couldn't make it. Didn't get the memo. I don't know the situation. Stuff happens. Mardu Reanimator, Rakdos midrange, Azorius Artifacts, and 8 filling out the other. So mid-rangey slash combo-y party here, combo versus mid-range, and it actually did make for interesting watching. But then I keep looking everywhere I look. I find this article. I keep looking for the results, you know. So you go to like magic.gg and you go to like the news, and that's your front page. Where's the results? And I go to play MTG and the other Magic Twitter accounts, and it's still a picture of Reed Duke there from the Pro Tour. Still happy for you, dude. Still don't see the results. And I finally found it. Make your joke about small indie company. I had to go into MTG Melee. After searching around for way too long, I found the tournament page on MTG Melee by Googling MTG Melee historic like Arena Championship 2. And I got this. So it appears by going down here and clicking on round 12, I have figured out that Hiroshi Onizuka won with Is It Wizards? Okay, let's go. Is it freaking Wizards, huh? You wanna open a file? That's something. Here we go. I mean, is this is the deck in Historic. This is the fierce creature out there. I keep flirting with the idea of doing a Historic video and turning my stream or my channel into sometimes Historic content, because every single, like, if I ever run out of a video idea, if I just sit down and I've got absolutely nothing I want to play in Standard, this might be what happens. Expressive iteration is still legal in Historic, for example. There's Alchemy rebalancing for Symmetry Sage, and there's Brazen Borrower. There's this god, like this Mervo God from Modern Horizons 2. That's I don't even know when that arrived in Historic. Svelin of Sea and Sky. It's a really sweet 3/4 that when it attacks you draw a card. It also gives your other Merfolk Award 1, which doesn't seem to apply here to anything. But as well as the indestructibility clause. I guess it's just hard to kill a 3/4 sometimes. Mentor's Guidance, they don't even have the image on here. This is another Alchemy rebalance card. That's a great way to draw some cards. So yeah, an interesting spread, and won by Is It freaking Wizards. I don't know why I always have to put the freaking on there. Playing against another Is It deck in the finals in Is It Phoenix, where we got the rebalanced Dragon's Rage Channeler, the nerfed Dragon's Rage Channeler, and yeah, other than that, it's birds. This is just Phoenix, Ledger Shredder Phoenix all over the place. Yeah, it's cool decks. So I guess the main discourse around this particular event, and it kind of went on Twitter, and it went on in the chat for the event, and all these other things all over the place, is, oh my god, Alchemy ruined Historic. We're still doing this. are still doing this. Some people will not let it die. I mean, Historic was flying high. It, like I said, was one of the breakout sets of 2020, breakout formats rather, of 2020, because they needed another format on their client where all of their competitive play had to shift to because of the pandemic. So they had to actually worry about making Historic good. But then when Alchemy arrived, they started rebalancing cards. And even though you don't see Alchemy cards in these top two lists, you see rebalance cards, rebalance Symmetry Sage, rebalance Dragon's Rage Channeler, so it works a little bit differently than the normal one. This one's a nerfed one actually, but Symmetry Sage got buffed up, Mentor's Guidance got buffed up, and we see those cards actually having an impact in these decks. Probably the card that I felt like, there were two cards I felt were like the actual breakouts though of the weekend. I thought Cathar's Combo was one of the coolest and most interesting decks of the weekend, but in terms of like cards that really broke out, in Rakdos Midrange, which has kind of always been a deck, it feels like at this point, Crucius Titan of Waves was a card I just saw all weekend everywhere. And the straight up value of turning your lands into spells when you don't need to draw more lands is so powerful. We've seen how that works with Fable and the Mirror Breaker. So Crucius drew a lot of like, ew, Alchemy is destroying Historic hate every time it hit the battlefield. And if we look over the deck lists, there's not much else in terms of Alchemy. There's a Molten Impact hanging out in the deck. There was also a lot of the most played deck, I believe, this Jund midrange deck. See if I can find one of those quickly up here, maybe a top finishing one. Yep. So this one had Jarzel, which that is a card that I played a little bit in Historic Brawl, but I think a lot of people like just kind of wrote off. What that? No, that's the draft deck. My bad. I always forget when there's draft in these things what happens. Okay. Is this the one? Okay, it's funny that they also showed me that. So we have a nerfed Minskimbu. Perilous Iteration is Alchemy only. This one does have 4 copies of Jarzel, the Dark Age Scion, to recast cards like Thoughtseize and Fatal Push and Inquisition of Kozilek and Abundant Harvest. And it is a very good card. I thought that Jarzel was a lot better than people gave it credit for. It's cool to see it getting some of this constructed play. I don't think a lot of people really expect it unless they were neck deep in Historic all the time. And alongside Crucius, whenever this deck was on camera doing Jund things, people are like, oh, it's Jund, I love Jund. Then they're like, wait, those are Alchemy cards. It's not my Jund. Yeah, it's Tarmogoyf. It's still not my Jund. Yeah, you can tell at this point I'm kind of amused by the whole like allergic reactions to some of the cards. I will grant that these coming at you from Brothers War are very powerful. They are much more powerful than some of the cards from like Dominaria United, Alchemy, and things like that. But I do still find them, like, unlike the cards that came out in New Capenna, and unlike the cards that came out with the, the really long title, something Baldur's Gate Alchemy, blah blah blah. Unlike those, I found these really accessible and I really like them, and I actually don't mind playing with them. They're pretty fun, and if you watch them on camera, you for the most part know how they work, as opposed to several of the specialized cards and other cards from that era. So I still think that these are a good direction for Alchemy. For people mourning the loss of Historic, they did introduce Explore, but the weird thing about that is, look at the graph. This is that weekly MTG formats play graph that they showed, and it's, I mean, Explorer overall, the trend is, you could call it flat generously. I would say the trend is down, and overall the trend for Historic continues to kind of trend up, and it's still much more played than Alchemy, well, it is much more played than Alchemy, but Alchemy is still more played than Explorer. So people opting out of playing with rebalanced cards seems to be, it still seems to be the vocal minority. And I gotta say, like, I think that the thing that vocal minority is going to hate the most is what I'm going to say next, which is, if the cards are cool and people want to play them, the trend won't reverse. I think that a lot of the Alchemy hate was earned by the cards that were created. As time goes on, if they keep creating decent cards, then I think that it's going to keep chipping away at the other formats. And now, and if we have all the Pioneer, then maybe this will change. Like, that's the other thing. Explorer was this placeholder for Pioneer. Everybody who loves playing Pioneer right now has to do it on Magic Online and all these other things. I still think that the competitive crowd, the purists, I guess, who want their Historic completely unsoiled by Alchemy and rebalancing and want Pioneer on Arena, I think that they're going to be surprised, because I still don't think there's as many of them as they think they are. It's like they think that these waves are going to come over from MTGO and just wash out all this Alchemy nonsense from some of the things that I hear them say. And I like, dude, it's still, Magic is a much more casual game than it used to be. The competitive side of it was always a tiny sliver of it. That was part of what made it special. But I think a lot of people get into an echo chamber with other people who are really interested in the competitive, sweaty, best of three side of things, and they don't realize just what a drop in kind of this giant bucket they really are. So I'm sorry if that's you. I'm a person who loves the competitive scene, and I love to watch the competitive scene, learn from the competitive scene, but I think the direction, like the trend right now for Historic, is going to kind of continue to go up. And if the card design for Alchemy and in turn Historic, like those kind of rebalance cards, especially with Lord of the Rings coming out, like that going into Historic is going to be huge. And I think if the card design continues to do well, I think it will keep trending up. And I don't see Pioneer like taking over Arena, but it could. I might be wrong about that. Maybe a lot more people love Pioneer than I know. And trust me, I've been to like 1,200. I was at DreamHack Atlanta, where it was a 1,200 person like Pioneer tournament. I know there are a lot of fans. It's just, it's hard to understand how big these numbers are that you're moving. All right, that was a ramble. What do you think? Are you still on the I hate Historic because of Alchemy train? Are you still boycotting the format? Does it still bother you that much? Have the recent Alchemy cards been better? Like, have you tried them? Has it actually brought you around? Because I'm going to get a lot of the hate. I'm going to get a lot of the hatey comments, the really strong opinions, but I don't really hear very often from the people who maybe came around on it or see things differently now from what they saw in the past. A lot of people who leave comments are just staunch, straight up, nope, not me. And, you do you. Hopefully Explorer is fun and turns into full Pioneer for you, and that you get everything you need from Arena with it. I do hope that. All right. Thank you for watching this video. I'll see you in the next video. You're cool.